Hello, welcome to theCUBE studios here in Palo Alto, California. I'm John Furrier, your host of theCUBE. We are here for some AI news. We have Jimmy White, who's the CTO, Chief Technology Officer at Calypso AI. They've been formerly on theCUBE. The co-founder's been on our SuperCloud 6. Great to see you, Jimmy. Thanks for coming on. We got some news to unpack here. You guys just released your security index, just launched it, providing the first comprehensive look and also safety rankings of all the major Gen AI models. There's a leaderboard and everything, so we'll dig into it. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me, John. Pleasure to be on and looking forward to unpacking all this.
We saw the news hit the wire. It's really, you guys are really the first solution to secure this model inference layer. Obviously, inference is a killer app. Training inference, reinforced learning. It's the new thing for AI. Obviously, all the data's in there. You guys have been building a system to really kind of watch the data leakage, misuse, really trying to get the enterprise to have that confidence, the enthusiasm, super high, right? Gen AI at scale, we're seeing in reporting on SiliconANGLE.com and our CUBE research team that a lot of the enterprises certainly have ushered in machine learning for things like fraud detection and applications and systems that they have, but generative AI has great benefits, super exciting opportunities, but they're still in the sandbox, they're stuck in what we call POC purgatory, because they want to be 100% sure you cannot be wrong. And so there's a lot of work going on, this end-to-end area in the enterprise, super hot area. So I'm super excited to see this index because you guys are really kind of putting the stress test. You have techniques in this. Take us through what this index is. First, explain the news. What is this security index? It's the first of its kind. How are you doing the ranking? Take us through.
Yeah, no, so a lot of companies are struggling with the idea of getting to production, how their Gen AI investment yields that ROI they're all chasing. And so one of the critical aspects of selecting the right model for your use case is the quality metrics for that model. So how good is this model at doing what you need it to do for your use case? But often forgotten is what's the security impact of that model? Is it good for that use case? Does it have flaws? Does it have things that it's vulnerable to? And so our new security index, the Calypso AI security index, aims to solve that problem by showing you how each model performs in key certain areas, giving you a score that you can compare and contrast against other models. To answer that question, which model is the combination of best quality and security for my use case?
We've had Neil on, this is the co-founder of the company, on the previous SuperCloud we learned a lot about your company. You guys have a product, a red team product. I love that interview. We came on our SuperCloud 6 with me and Dave Vellante. Talk about, before we get into some of the how you guys did this, set the table for us. Neil kind of brought this up last year. Calypso AI has a security inference layer kind of product. It's called a red team product. What do you guys have? Why are you guys doing this?
Yeah, so we began our journey with an enterprise with defense. And so defense was all about protecting the use case when it goes to production. But in fact, the security journey starts way upstream from there. So when you're selecting which use case that you wish to use AI for, there's a problem out there that when everyone has a hammer, every single thing looks like a nail, right? So solving everything with AI is not the right way to go about it. Selecting the right use case and then selecting the right model for that use case. So if it's a highly regulated industry, you need to use a model that is appropriate to use in that setting. If you have a proprietary information you don't want leaked, or if you're interacting with minors, if it's a company that allows models to be used by children or teenagers, it's imperative that you have a model that's fit for purpose. So our customers were looking for a way to test various models against different criteria that their own customers would face with that use case. And so we built this red team, which allows you to test every single model in one of three ways. Our signature attacks, which are effectively a variety of attacks that fall across all areas of harm within models. Secondly, our operational attacks, which are legacy style attacks like DDoS attacks and InfoSec, but applied to an AI setting. So for example, you could ask something like, what's the history of the world in 30 million lines? That will sail through traditional DDoS detection, hit the model, cause that model to generate a huge response, which will block the GPU and give you a denial of service attack. But lastly, our biggest, I guess, breakthrough was our agentic warfare technology. This is leveraging what a lot of people, every newspaper is talking about at the moment, agent AI, by using that to find flaws and gaps in existing AI models, exposing those so you can understand how to deal with those threats.
Talk about agentic warfare. I love that term, I mean, in the sense of it plays off the agent wave that's hitting. The hype is off the charts. Now, we see agents, we love agents. We see this will be a preferred future very quickly. Agentic describes the infrastructure, but agentic warfare implies there's some automation involved. Can you define what agentic warfare means?
Yeah, absolutely. So agents can be thought about as, a virtual representation of a person doing a job. So, where you have a pen tester, somebody that will try find ways of breaking or manipulating a piece of software. What we do is we create agents, multiple different types of agents. Some are researcher agents that research the latest threats. Some are agents that will try different types of prompt injection, jailbreaking, etc. And what you do is you give it an intent. So what is the thing you were trying to get the model to do that it should not do? So an example might be give me John's social security number or John's IBAN for his bank account or whatever the case may be. And our agents will try um, millions and millions and millions of different techniques that it figures out itself to get that information. And another agent will verify that the information it received meets the intent that you gave it, thus completing the attack. And so you use this for good purposes to find flaws in models before you release them to production.
I love the for good angle. Just to kind of throw a side note here, we'll get back to the leaderboard in a second. This symmetry trend is happening. It used to be very asymmetrical. The bad guys had an advantage, right? We've seen that. You're seeing a lot of that asymmetry also in media right now, disinformation. So the cybersecurity is kind of setting the table for some of the best practices across all industries with data. What's your comment on that? Could you share your thoughts? What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. What we have, we're seeing the investment in Gen AI from enterprises go into huge money. So on the inference side, companies like Anthropic publishing their revenue, and we're getting into billions of dollars. So there's a huge amount of enterprises building applications against that right now. When those applications go live, which have already started happening, now you've got a brand new attack surface. And so cybersecurity is leading the way in understanding those threats, but also it needs to embrace generative AI to bring to the table to fight fire with fire.
I love it. I mean, I talked to a lot of CISOs and security folks. It's like Gen AI. Oh, it's great. It's just another application to us. We have we look beyond the hype. We have that bar. So this leaderboard is super important. I want to get in now into the news. First of all, there'll be a lot of attention. Everyone's going to want to know, how do I rank in this thing?
Yeah.
How do you measure it? So take me through the models you guys ranked, some of the advanced techniques you touched upon, agentic warfare. What metrics did you guys kind of pick to kind of settle around that composes the leaderboard?
Yeah, no. So first of all, we pick the top models. So the models that are the highest quality models in the world, because that is typically what enterprises use to build their products against. We can test any model, but we began with the top 12. In those, we've seen that Anthropic, we've already spoken about, are the safest model. Now, their intent as a company is to build safe generative AI models. So they've really achieved that, and our hats are off to them. They've done a great job. With all of these models, you can, of course, find threats that do break through. So it's important to know what those are and protect against them. So you still need the defensive element. But before we came along, there were certain metrics that were used, like attack success rate. That's a very basic metric. So I gave a prompt, it gave me a response, but there's a lot of things missing there, right? So the complexity of an attack or the intent of the attack was not factored in. So we factor in all of those things. And effectively, severity is one of the biggest things. If you get a model to tell you, how to steal cookies from the cookie jar, I don't think any CISO is going to care about that.
Yeah.
But if you manage to steal proprietary information, like the often used story of stealing the recipe for Coca-Cola, well, then I'm sure the CISO will care a lot about that. So severity is one of the scores that we use to build our CASI score. Complexity is another. So how advanced is this attack? Old techniques like DAN, we measured their decay rate. So how decayed their effectiveness is against the latest models. A DAN attack would be very capable of breaking a GPT 3.5 model, but not so Claude 3.7. So, and then lastly, the defensive breaking point. How much effort and cost do you have to put in to achieve this attack? Is it nation state levels of investment, or can a script kiddie do this from their bedroom?
So the CASI, that's your score. That's the final score. That
That's
stands
right.
for what? Calypso AI Security Leaderboard Index?
Yeah, Calypso AI Security Index.
Okay,
That's
that's
right.
like the major score. That's like the final answer, right? That's your grade in
Yeah,
your test. Okay, you mentioned the other things, risk. So like the risk management piece and value cost.
yeah,
Those are the other areas. So overall
yeah.
score,
So
risk and value. Is that
that's
it?
right. So risk and value, one of the, if you're using a model for something that's basic inside your company, there's no real danger, you can typically get away with a cheaper, less secure model. So just because a model has a low CASI score does not mean it doesn't have its fit for purpose areas that you can use in your enterprise. But if you're putting something out prime time in production that's customer facing, you really want to make sure your CASI score is high and understand the type of threat actors that will be trying to break into your system. You mentioned fraud earlier. If it's organized crime, or if it's maybe health records for United States citizens, it may be a nation state trying to break in, and therefore you need a really high complexity score, really high CASI score, and you need to make sure that the severity level is very high as well.
All right, let's get into before we get into the CASI scoreboard, what's the end game here? Obviously, we said at the top here, companies want to maintain that security posture, those standards, but bring in innovation. They don't want to be a blocker. But it's also a people business. Craft is big, manual work is done. That's a big theme in AI right now. What problem does this solve besides protecting the companies? What does it do for the teams? Is it a red team benefit? What is the benefit when you look at this agentic warfare method and some of the things you guys do? I'm sure it fills gaps in all those things, but what's the end game? What's the benefit?
So the very first one is apples to apples comparison. So you can actually compare models against each other in a meaningful way. Secondly, we make this leaderboard publicly available. So regular users, folks that aren't doing this for their work, they just want to use it in school, in their personal life, etc. They can go there and see which provider to choose based on the type of things they use the model for, right? One of the other major benefits is when you're a red team professional and you work in a company that has a model that's chosen for you because of your enterprise vendor agreements. So let's say you're using Microsoft, you might be on the Azure stack using GPD or Phi, whereas if you're on the Google stack, you might be using Gemini or Gemma. And so you might be forced to use a specific model family, and you need to understand out of that family which one is best for my use case, or which ones am I worried about and I want to put a ban order on inside my organization.
Real quick, Jimmy, on performance, do you guys measure performance at all? Or is that performance of the tests? I noticed in the benchmarks and in the leaderboard, there's a performance column. What is that about?
Yeah, so we do, of course, measure performance. So the average performance is so things like MMLU, et cetera, the how good a model is at a purpose, right? So the really important thing about that is you want to get that trade-off right. So you want to have the best combination of quality performance to security performance. And so we give you the average performance rating as well, so that you can make that decision without having to go to other leaderboards.
Got it. All right, let's get into the leaderboard. Looking at the models here, let's go look at the rankings. Anthropic, Claude 3.5, Sonnet 96.25. What's the measure on the overall CASI score mean? Is it
Yeah.
higher the,
So
the worse it is? And what's the
so
bar?
high,
What's if that's an A or an F, whatever you want to look at it, what's the
yeah, so that's an A.
what's the average?
Uh,
Where do I know? Where's the line between I could be indifferent or where's the concern? Where's the red, yellow, green kind of vibe here?
no, that's a good question. So first of all, the higher the score, the better. So the higher the score, more secure your model is. What's interesting about the leaderboard as it stands, and this changes on a daily basis, we update the leaderboard weekly. I can already give you a sneak peek into next week, and that Claude 3.7 has come in hot at number two. So it's actually coming in less secure than its predecessor 3.5. So it's interesting as companies try to release new models to do different things for more people, sometimes the security score will go down on that model. But the top three are the ones to really focus in on. They have quite a lead over the rest of the table. And so you can see quite a gap from Anthropic, Microsoft, and again, Anthropic. They're the two companies creating the safest models on planet Earth at the moment.
Mhm.
And something that we I think can't but speak about, DeepSeek R1 got a huge amount of bad press recently. Obviously, the application for DeepSeek, when you're giving your information, it may end up being in China. The actual model itself is quite good, and a lot of the reports were not as factual as they may should have been. DeepSeek R1 is mid-table on our leaderboard,
Mhm.
and it deserves that position. And it's one of the only reasoning models, so the latest breed of models, to appear on the leaderboard.
Got it. So there's some context to these models. Okay, so DeepSeek has got a 74.4. That's R1, distilled Llama 70B.
Yeah.
That's a good score then for them because they're reasoning. So they would be the leader of the reasoning models. Or did I get that right?
Yeah, no, you're right. They're up there. So one of the things I would take into consideration, the reason their score is lower is that whilst it's very good at blocking attacks in the main, it does give quite a lot of false information. So if you ask it questions about maybe historical Chinese incidents, it won't give you the answer that you expect from history. If you ask questions about the US historical, it'll give maybe inflamed answers about those things. So whilst it's good at fending off attacks, it does provide quite a lot of false information.
Okay, I noticed you guys stopped at 67. Alibaba's at the bottom. Was there other ones that didn't make the cut? How do you guys look at what doesn't make the list? Is there a threshold? Do you just cut them? What's that?
Yeah, so you'll see that GPT 3.5 Turbo is second last on the list. So in next week's leaderboard, it actually falls off the list completely. It drops out of the top 12. We're keeping it at a top 12 for now. What we want to see is models fall off and promote. So what's really interesting is all of these models, even if they don't change, the new attacks that come out on a weekly basis cause them to find new gaps. So something that might be performing really well this week may perform poorly next week, just like what happened with 3.5.
Okay, so I love the agentic warfare concept. Do you guys have agentic remediation going on too? I mean, or are you measuring how the model's going to respond? Because a lot of the reinforced learning is coming. Obviously, your reasoning's there. I mean, there's a big debate between causal AI and kind of, I call it the propensity side of it, where it's really has to do its own kind of less causal, more reasoning, right? So what do you see on that?
Yeah, so it's really good observation. We have effectively got purple team coming out H2, and that is the blend of blue and red, obviously, which takes new threats discovered by red, creates custom rules using our custom defense system, which is based on generative AI. And this is a critical piece, it doesn't auto deploy to production. And we have a human in the loop there. So we are big advocates about safety and security in AI, and we have to walk the walk. So if we're about to put out custom rules generated by an AI fully without a human pressing go, that's a bad step. So that human in the loop step, even though we try to automate as much as possible and we're using AI to create these custom defenses, we need a human to say, yes, this is good enough for live. And so that's the one part that isn't fully automatic.
All right, so I have to ask you, where do people find this? Certainly, we love it. Great work, by the way. Congratulations to you and the team. Say hello to Neil for me over there. Good work. Hey, if you got a widget, we'll put it on our website. Love leaderboards, especially it's a great benefit to the community. Where do we find this?
So CalypsoAI.com, and we've got our leaderboard link right at the top, and it'll be updated on a weekly basis. So once you've seen it, please come back and check it out.
All right, give us an API. We'll put it on our site. All right, now let's just, before we end, I want to just get your thoughts on impact of this. So you got a leaderboard. You guys are doing your job. Congratulations. Thank you very much for this great service. Now, the people out there building for the enterprise, there's a huge startup ecosystem emerging. They want to sell into the enterprises, and they have a big high bar to hurdle over from a security standpoint. POCs, tons of one-year contracts going on. So these startups and other companies, by the way, too, that want to kind of integrate in with these enterprises, they need to integrate into what they already got. Not a lot of people want to change their their tools and their platforms. Don't mind changing process. This is our observation on our research side. So the question for you is, how does this leaderboard help them run their POCs, benchmarking, because benchmarks are crazy these days. It runs the fastest of everything. So
Yeah.
I'm a developer. I might want to use a DeepSeek for the reasoning or the Anthropic Claude 3.7, but I'm going to run that on a workload that I built on a stack that I built running on, say, a Dell AI factory or an NVIDIA machine or an HP, whatever it is. I got to run that software somewhere. So what's this do for those folks trying to evaluate the efficacy of their workloads?
Yeah, so I guess the very first thing is a lot of folks download their models if they're hosting them themselves in their own hardware from Hugging Face and other vendors like that. And so the first thing you can do is you can evaluate that model without deploying it to figure out if it's safe for your use. Second thing, you've got a great starting place where we're providing you with the list of safest models. If any of those models fit your use case, just use them straight away, and that'll save you a bunch of time. But what's critical is that this is not a one and done. It's CI/CD. You need to integrate this into your pipeline. So as these models iterate, as the threats iterate, that cat and mouse game does not end. You need to continuously test this as you redeploy and add new applications to your stack. One thing I would also point out is that latency is becoming an issue. So when you're using generative AI models, if you're using publicly hosted models, there's peak times that you might have even noticed yourself. Responses can be delayed. Understand that those impacts will also impact your customer when they're using your product. And so there's many areas from testing before you go to production to security and defense in production, and also understanding impact to your customers based on what happens in the field.
Jimmy, great to have you on. When I'm in Ireland, we'll have a Guinness, have a pint, and get together. Final question for you is, what was the motivation? Did you guys just say, hey, we got all this data, we should publish this? Obviously, it's great for the community, as I mentioned, but was it that, hey, we got the red team product, we're seeing all this, we have the data, was it more of a contribution to the community? Do you think it's got benefits to the business? And what was the rationale? What was it like sitting around the room saying, hey, we should do this?
Honestly, we were building our red team products and we had all this information and we thought, is there anything we can do open source, etc., here that will benefit the wider community? And one of the things we figured was we had a byproduct of all of this information. Why not cut some of it off every week, slice it up, and put it out on a website? Obviously, it benefits us from a people understanding what we do and how we do it. We get some good promotion from it. But the real motivation was we had this extra byproduct of information. Let's just use it for good.
Awesome. Jimmy, thanks a lot for coming on and break down and unpack and do a deep dive on the news. Really appreciate it. Calypso AI launching Security Index. It's the first comprehensive safety ranking of all the major generative AI models. Again, congratulations. We love it. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, John. Pleasure.
Okay, I'm John Furrier here in the Palo Alto Studios, bringing all the news to you here in the AI world. Every day something's happening. Every day the models are coming out with more advanced features, leapfrogging the other ones. It's just a game of leapfrog, more and more benchmarks coming out. We're trying to make sense of it. And that's what we do here on theCUBE, extracting the signal from the noise. Thanks for watching.